Hey, thanks so much for joining me today on GinaHainesTV. I'm about to get in the car and head off to talk with Dr Simon Pollard, Christchurch's very own Spiderman. Come on, join me. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Simon Pollard. I'm a writer and documentary advisor and a photographer with a background as a spider biologist, and I'm involved in science communication and making science accessible to a wide audience.
So what do we call you? Dr Simon Pollard, man.
Man, that's what he needs to say.
Do you have like a Spider-Man outfit? You should get one of them. If it was me, you see, and I was a spider person, I would have a Spider-Man outfit.
Look, I tell you, I was sitting next to the Vice President of Marketing for Marvel Comics, flying from New York to LA, and I said to him, spiders should be the next dinosaurs for kids. I was back in New York 3 months later and I went to see him, and they ended up doing a spread of my photos as if Peter Parker had been taking pictures in Spider-Man comics.
Yeah.
Now that was pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of my highlights.
Highlight. Whoa.
But the funny thing
Spider-Man.
it was one of the first times I'd been asked to get tarantulas back to New Zealand. I used to bring them in live, and I had all the import permits, and they were for display in museums. And I had permission to buy them from a recognised shop to bring them back to New Zealand. And they sort of put them in, but like Chinese takeout containers.
Wow, yeah.
And I'd seen the proofs for the Spider-Man article, but I hadn't seen the finished product. And I was holding these two tarantulas, leaving a mall, and there was one of those sort of island shops that sold comics. And there was my comic, Spider-Man comic. Out, it's just come out. So of course I got sent copies, but I bought a copy and I thought, I'm walking out with
a couple of spiders.
And I wanted to be a zoologist since the age of 7. That was just never shifted. And at that stage you would romanticise the idea of working with African mammals. And at the same time that I developed that interest in being a zoologist about the age of 7, I also became fascinated with Gothic horror films. And that was through my uncle. The whole original Frankenstein and Dracula from the 30s and 40s, all those spin-off films, just loved them and loved hearing about them, though I never saw them for ages. And I remember a school project, and I was meant to write about African mammals, and I ended up writing about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Mum sort of said, well, no, you have to write about mammals, you can't write about Frankenstein and Dracula. So I did zoology at university, and then when I was 20, in my 3rd year, I became interested in spiders. Just a light went on in my head, and I was doing an entomology, 3rd year entomology course, and we had to have a collection of the animals we wanted to work, and I thought, spiders. So I went out and worked on spiders, and that was in 1977.
Just ordinary spiders?
Just New Zealand spiders. It was just idea of a hunting spider and whatever. But the following year, Robert Jackson joined the faculty at the University of Canterbury, and he was a spider biologist. He worked on live spiders, and I was sort of his, he took me under his wing.
Protege,
and worked with him ever since. So, we still work together and done trips all around the world. It was very much, going through that process of being an academic, finding spiders, being passionate about them, doing a Masters on Spiders, PhD, and having these postdocs, and then realising that other things were coming out of this, like the popular writing, and I started becoming interested in photography, close-up photography, and it was around the end of my PhD, and I'd been asked to be an assistant for a National Geographic photographer who was working with Robert on an article on jumping spiders. So we were in New Zealand and Australia, then they were in Africa and other places. So I worked with Mark for 3 months, and I never thought I would do this. I would never thought I would become a natural history photographer. But I looked through Mark's viewfinder once when we were in Australia, and I went and I thought, oh my God, that's a world I would want to be in. And so I came back here, and I had gone to the sub-Antarctic, to the Antipodes, which was just, this thing that came out of the blue. The Department of Conservation was taking fuel to Campbell Island, and they were going to go via the Antipodes. The 4th expedition there in a century.
Wow.
It was in 1990. And basically Doc said, does anybody want to go? And so I went, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was just like being on New Zealand 1,000 years ago before people arrived. And anyway, I came back and I contacted New Zealand Geographic about doing a story. And they'd just run a story on Campbell Island in the sub-Antarctic, and they said, well, I've just done that. And I mentioned I was working on spiders, and they said, well, do you want to do something on spiders? And so I got my brother to send out close-up gear from New York and I had a camera body my father had given as a graduation gift. And so I basically learnt to take close-up photos. And New Zealand Geographic were incredibly generous because they gave me unlimited film. So I got to, be reasonably good at this. And a lot of, I think, what happened is I knew what I was taking photographs of, and I knew the animals, so I can get a look about them that was in your face. And I mean, my philosophy for taking those photographs has always been, imagine if I was this high in their world and I wasn't going to get eaten, I could take their photographs. And they're the portraits. That sort of led to, coming back to New Zealand, and that was so when I got asked about documentary advising. And my first time was in Sri Lanka, and that was working with the BBC, and that I've sort of had that relationship for about 20 years. And a lot of what it is I'm not the cameraman and I'm not the producer, of course, but I'm telling them stories that would be good stories in a documentary. You have different personalities with spiders. Well, this one, if you want to get a shot of it running that way, this one will just keep going. This one will stop halfway. This one will kill anything put in front of it. So you have all your stars, and that's worked out really well. And so that's been a great thing. And again, it's communicating science to that broad audience by telling those great natural history stories, which is the same with the bug show last year. One that we talked about, the jewel wasp and the cockroach, and the jewel wasp doing brain surgery on a cockroach to make it a compliant nursery and source of food for the offspring. It's eating alive. So it injects venom into two parts of the brain, and that causes the cockroach to lose the will to walk. Everything's fine. It could walk, just can't be bothered.
Wow.
So it's not paralysed like the legs won't work. And the venom also causes its metabolism to lower, which increases its chances of surviving what it's about to go through. Ultimately it will die, but it's just increasing the chance it will live longer, because it's a race against time. And the dopamine in the venom also causes the cockroach to groom excessively, cleans all the crap off itself, keeps the mess off, so it's as clean a nursery as possible. And then the wasp comes back and bites off one of the cockroach's antennae and sucks the hemolymph, the blood, to test the concentration of the venom it's injected to make sure it won't wake up, it won't take off. And then it leads it like a dog on a leash into a nest.
It's just not cool, is it? It's just not cool.
You're really glad this doesn't, you'd hate to say, oh, they got Bob. He won't be at your pirate party. He's an incubator.
I liked Bob.
And so it leads it into the nest, lays an egg on it, and then the wasp leaves. The egg hatches, sucks blood a little bit, then it burrows into the body of the cockroach and eats all the non-essential organs to keep it alive as long as possible.
Oh, it's not good, is it?
And it also, the larvae, it produces an antimicrobial that targets a bacteria that targets cockroaches to keep things as clean as possible. And then it kills the cockroach, and it's now filling the abdomen as a maggot. And then it pupates, and a month later the wasp comes out.
See ya.
Isn't that a good story?
And thanks so much, cockroach. Mwah.
Yeah. It's a multi-layered, beyond your imagination that an animal can do this. So that's sort of a driver for me, is telling those stories. And the other driver is having a good editor now. And knowing, it's that trust and that constructive criticism that whether it's the two people I'm working with at Te Papa Press go, it doesn't work.
And you believe that,
and I
so
believe
you go with it.
And it's like that fresh clear of it's fantastic. I go back and you're absolutely right.
Simon, what about the external drivers thing? We're talking about drivers.
When I did my PhD, I published it all as papers before I submitted it. Unless it's out there, nobody sees it. It's just a book on a shelf. And so that, what motivated me to do my PhD? Well, it was curiosity is what drives science to me as a scientist. Is curiosity.
And that's a strength of yours, I would say.
It's storytelling. And whether it's working, curiosity. I worked on crab spiders and how they got the insides out of prey, and I had a microbalance that weighed down to a 10 millionth of a gram. And I could work out all these things going on. I just loved it. I've often wondered, what if I had $10 million in the bank and I didn't have to do any of this? So I didn't have to get on a plane, I didn't have to fly X hours, I didn't have to travel 12 hours, I didn't have to spend 2 weeks taking photographs and researching the story. Would I still do that? And it worries me to think I'm not sure. So there is a motivator there of not money, but it's of finishing a project because it might lead somewhere else. And I think that's been a really big thing for me, is that I've looked at these things as opportunities, and it's like I say with the books or the project with Te Papa and Weta Workshop last year, I mean, it leads to things, or it changes the way you think, gets you a chance to do something else.
Yeah.
You have that credibility. Oh, I'm with this agency, I write for this magazine, are you interested in an article? Are you interested in sending me here?
What other strengths do you see as your strengths?
If I look at the feedback I got from Te Papa last year, it was being able to explain things how people needed to have it explained.
Okay. Do you like your job?
I do. Here's somebody who at the age of 20 became interested in spiders, was passionate about that, lucky to have met Robert, who, Spiderman's apprentice almost, through all of these processes and involved in all these projects, and then to have had all these other things spin off. Mm-hmm. If I could have seen myself, say 30 years on from when I was 20, I'd have said my life exceeded my expectations.
Well, what would you go back and tell your 18-year-old self now then?
I wouldn't say do anything different. I think you take opportunities, and then you made mistakes along the way, and some things worked out and you were disappointed by this and you thought this might happen, it didn't, but overall I wouldn't really change much. And I think pursue what you're passionate about.
Good, yeah.
And if it's millipedes, don't be swayed into saying you should do medicine. There's no money in millipedes. Well, there's probably no money in millipedes, but it's a passion.
Yeah.
And I think being happy in what you do, and there's sort of a fine line between being paid for your hobby, which isn't necessarily a good thing, because I think you need to have other things. My natural history photographs, they're not a hobby, they're taken with a purpose. I wouldn't go, oh, fantastic, I'm going to go out to the garden and take photos for bugs. I need this or I need that. But with the memorial art photos, I don't care if nobody ever saw them.
Right.
I would still take them.
And you probably may not ever do anything with those photos.
No, I know. I think what? I did that. I had an exhibition of photographs at Coca about 13 years ago, and it was somebody had suggested it, and I had these photographs relating to biology and mortality, and that's what I showed, and I did that, and it was fine. I quoted from the original Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, talking about the mysterious fears of our nature.
That's a whole circle, isn't it? From 7 to however old you are now, and that Frankenstein thing.
Oh, it's always there.
You that parasitical thing, there's a really strong...
It's a gothic, it's not a gothic,
yeah.
Other than you saw my t-shirt I'm getting
that's
at home. But it's more that fantastic storytelling of Frankenstein and Dracula about immortality. Mm-hmm. Being immortal. It's the look of those sets of the 30s and the 40s.
That's beautiful. Okay, right now, would you say your job is your joy of being?
No, I think my wife is.
Yeah.
I think it's a work-life balance, and I know that sounds so cliched, but the most important thing in your life will always be other people. Mm-hmm. So my relationship with Cynthia and our life here, and our cats and our house and our garden and reading and watching movies, all of that stuff's important, and this is just part of it.
Yeah.
That's what, to me, it's not, I don't measure my success to whether I have a book out, whether it wins an award, or whether it sells so many copies. It's again, I just see, well, look what might come up, like this medical museum.
Yeah. Oh, look, hello, me, today. Yeah.
See?
Okay, right, 3 words to describe Simon.
I would say happy-go-lucky would be one of them.
That's 3. Happy-go-lucky.
But I mean,
let's hyphenate. Happy-go-lucky.
I think as I got older, very empathetic towards animals. I would never, as a kid, I'd go fishing. I would never ever go fishing. I would never kill things. When I did my PhD, I never killed my spiders. It was only when I had to do some form of microscopy I had to kill them. Mm-hmm. But even then, no. So much more empathetic towards animals. The idea of people hurting animals, I could never. I've got a friend who's a volunteer at the SPCA. I said I couldn't do it. I just could not do that. And Cynthia reminds me, when we got one of our moggies, we went into this room full of cats, and Cynthia picked out one, and I was just stressed because I would take all of them.
You want to leave, you don't want to leave them.
I'm playing God, I'm taking you and not you.
Yeah.
So I think that empathy's there. I think a sense of humour, not taking I do sort of think of ourselves as being slightly out of control primates in the jungle. Just imagine if you could know what people are thinking.
Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think it would be terrifying. I feel very lucky too. I feel very lucky that I met Cynthia, which is about 17 years ago. It's fantastic. Very good for me. I think I'm very lucky to be able to do these things and get satisfaction out of them and not be bogged down by, well, look, that fell over or that didn't quite work out. And it has been. You go through life and things change.
Well, what an exciting life.
I just made it up.
I don't believe you for a minute.
I have a cabin in Darfield I go to and just make it all up.
Then you would have a lot more books. Have you got another? Do you write under a pseudonym? Because this is
J.K.
It has been an exciting life.
It's good, yeah. So yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you, Simon.
Hey, was that good?
So here we are, right back where we started from. Back home again. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed hearing Simon's stories and about his work and how who he is affects what he does and what an exciting life he's living. If you enjoyed it, please like it and share it and head on over to GinaHaines.com and check out more work happiness interviews and sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss a beat. Thanks so much for joining me and have a great day.